So, hello everybody. I'm Detective Sergeant Megan Kenzie. I'm the chair of Wiltshire's Ethnic Police Association, and I'm here with Wali Rahman, who is also the co-chair of Wiltshire Council's Black and Minority Ethnic Staff Network. And our special guest today is John Amaechi OBE, who has kindly given us the opportunity to interview him prior to our Black History Month event, which is on the 20th of October, where he is one of our guest speakers.
John is the CEO of Amaechi Performance Systems and an organizational psychologist. John is also a best-selling author, a sought-after public speaker, an executive coach, and amongst other things, he was the first British basketball player to have a career in the NBA. So hello, John, and thank you for joining us this afternoon.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Megan. Thank you, Wali.
Thank you. So John, again, you get me to begin. So can you start by just telling us a little bit about your early life and your childhood? I know that you were originally born in the United States and then you moved to England. So can you just tell us a little bit about what it was like and what you remember most about that period of your life?
So I was born in America. I should point out that my mother's from Hyde. And so she was simply working in America when I was born. I don't really remember anything. I left by the time, we left by the time I was, I think 3 or 4. So I think I remember carrying a Lego something onto a plane, but it was a long time ago. So those early days were, my American influence was remarkably small because we came from there straight back to Stockport, from Boston in America to Stockport, to live with my grandparents, or my mum's parents. And yeah, that was my early life growing up in Stockport. My mum was a doctor. She had to kind of restart when she came to the United Kingdom. She'd gone from being quite a lauded consultant in America to being a very junior doctor again back in Cheadle, which is up north for those of the people who don't know. And so my young life was defined by my 2 sisters and myself irritating each other to death, and my mother taking us on adventures. We used to go to North Wales a lot. We used to go to, the different castles, like Rudling Castle was one of my favorites. We used to do all that kind of stuff, and it was remarkable actually. For a single mum, the fact that she never let us feel like we lacked anything. It was remarkable.
Thank you. So you obviously have said the majority of your time was in England, as you remember when you were younger, but then your journey took you to the NBA. Mm-hmm. So can you tell me a little bit about your journey? So how that came about and your journey to the NBA in the terms of the hard work and the motivation and probably you've said about your mum being a single parent, the sacrifices that it took to get you there.
Mm-hmm. So I'm not a sports fan. Not now, not before, not ever. I've never been interested in it really. The reason that I played basketball, I started off in a little gym in Chorlton, which is Manchester, South Manchester. And I started off in a little gym there when I was 17 years old. And that was the first time I picked up a basketball, because before that, my life was defined by Greg's steak slices. And actually, in fairness, back then it was actually Martin's. It wasn't Greg's. That's how old I am. Martin's steak slices and books. I lived in books. I love science fiction, as you can see. That's who I am. And the idea of doing exercise, I was a hugely overweight kid. The idea of doing exercise was not my cup of tea. And then I was introduced to basketball, didn't care about it at all. But I entered the gym, and it was the first time that people weren't scared of me. It was the first time that people didn't make fun of me for being big and black. It was the first time that I walked into a place where everybody, the overriding thing that people saw was my potential. And that was quite intoxicating, the idea that, but that was it, that first practice, that first 45 minutes was when I said I would play in the NBA. In that first 45 minutes. And the thing that kind of sealed the deal for me was not just that I said I was going to play in the NBA. It was the fact that all the people I told in that room, who I'd known for 45 minutes, said, of course you will. Of course you will. And that's what started me off in the sport. I ended up having to find a book that had all the names of high schools in America, because I knew I couldn't go to university. I knew I wasn't good enough. So while I was playing a year in England, my first year in England, and I was bad, I found schools in America, and I wrote 3,000 letters, because this was 1987, something like that. So it's before email. And I wrote 3,000 letters to America saying essentially, hi, my name's John. I'm big, black and British and English. Can I play on your team? I got 3 replies. Only one of which was a yes. I actually got 2 no replies, which was interesting. Why bother? But they did. And it was after getting that I got a connection to go to Toledo, Ohio, which is, again, another one of those places, much like Stockport, that most people don't know where it is. It's in the Midwest of America. And I ended up going to high school there for 1 year, and that was what started me on my path to the NBA.
Thank you.
So during your time in the NBA, there were a lot of reports, especially during the 2000 season, when the LA Lakers had just won the championship with Shaq and Kobe. So there were reports that while you were playing with the Orlando Magic, that the Lakers had offered you $17 million, and you turned that down, and you decided to stay with the Orlando Magic. Now, what was the main reason for that, and what can we learn from that decision?
Oh, I don't know if you can learn anything, but so I bang on a lot about, and my entire life, by the way, it's fairly consistent. I bang on about being a person of principle. My mother used to tell me that you can't be a part-time man of principle, and none of us can be a part-time person of principle. It's just that normally our principles are challenged in the smallest of ways, and we feel really good about those small sacrifices. Rarely does someone offer you everything you have ever wanted. But the year before the Lakers offered me that contract, and indeed that year, probably 10 different teams offered me contracts. The Orlando Magic were the only team that gave me a chance. The only team that gave me a shot. And it wasn't loyalty that I stayed for, because I don't really believe in that. It's way too transactional for me. Loyalty implies that something else will happen for you in return. Mm-hmm. It's principle. The principle is that they gave me an opportunity, I will return that, knowing that I could not receive anything for that. And that's what I did. I turned down that money for a lot less money. I went on to earn decent money in other jobs. So it's, it swings and roundabouts. But I certainly missed out on the opportunity to get myself 4 championship rings with the Lakers, which is something I would have loved to do. But nowadays I'm a psychologist, and psychologists operate on trust. We work in organizations where you have to be principled, where we learn things about organizations that nobody can know as we try and fix them. And people often tell me, can we trust you? How much is your word worth? And I tell them about $17 million.
Brilliant. So, and when did you realize you wanted to become a psychologist then? Because you mentioned that, your interest in sports and particularly basketball wasn't that huge. So when did you decide to become a psychologist, and how did you achieve that dream?
I decided to be a psychologist when I was 7. I used to go on visits. This makes me very old, but back in the day when doctors used to visit you at home, and back in the day when doctors' children used to come with them when they used to visit you in the home, I used to go on visits with her. I used to go into these families' homes, and my mum worked a lot in palliative care. So the families where somebody was sick and they weren't going to get better, and I used to walk into these houses, and I would tell my mum that the air is heavy in here. It's hard to breathe. And each of us, and I think it's unfortunate at this time, many of us are mourning loved ones or mentors or people who passed away because of COVID, and you know that feeling of walking into a room that is the air is heavy. And I told her this at 7 years old, and then I'd watch as she worked, and I wouldn't see what she did upstairs with the sick person, but I'd watch what she did in the living room, where an entire family, sometimes an entire extended family, would be there, and they would be, Dr. Amaechi, how can I cope? They're firing their questions. What can I do? I'll never manage. This is going to be and I would watch, and she listened and listened, and then finally she'd say, no, you can do that. You can do this. You're going to do this and this and this, and I'll see you in a week. And all of a sudden, it's like you could breathe for a second. And somebody would repeat back exactly as she said, you're right, Dr. Amaechi, I'll do this, this, and this, and I'll see you in a second. I'll see you in a week. And that was in 1977 when I was 7 years old. And that was when Star Wars came out. The film Star Wars came out. And in the film Star Wars, about 42 and a half minutes in approximately, there's a scene where Obi-Wan Kenobi is stopped by the stormtroopers, and he says to them, these aren't the droids you're looking for. And they repeat it back. And so I thought my mom was a Jedi at that time. I thought she was a Jedi. And I thought that because she was a Jedi, that I was a Jedi. And so I went to the library, because I was a geek. That's what geek kids do. I went to the library and I asked the librarian for some information on becoming a Jedi. And she told me about Star Wars, and I was like, no. And I explained what my mum did, and this is why libraries are important, and this is why librarians are important. She didn't say, you're an idiot, kid, get out of here. She said, that sounds like psychology, and those books are over there. And that's why at 7 years old, I am a psychologist, because it's as close to being a Jedi.
Oh, wow.
I did wonder if that was going to make any noise.
Oh, it's real.
I did wonder.
And you actually put Jedi on your business card, don't you?
Yep. Everyday Jedi.
Yeah.
So obviously you're here speaking to us today, and you're going to be speaking to us in 2 weeks time now. So my next question is, how did from the psychology element, how did that then translate into the public speaking that you do now? And I've seen your, some of the TED Talks and things, and your passion for activism.
I don't know that I'm an activist. I think people call me an activist a lot,
Yeah.
but I think what they mean is that I'm inconvenient and loud. But I'm not actually an activist. I'm interested in human dignity. And where I see people affronted, I can't imagine not saying something. I think that, because I don't march and I don't kneel. My knees would explode if I tried. I use the tools that I have to try and make the world match with the rhetoric. Because if we look on websites of councils, I'm an NHS director in the NHS, and I look at our values, and then I look at actually the lived experience of different types of people, and they don't add up. So I feel that my job is to try and, get underneath this and push it so that what we say we stand for is actually what people experience. And if that's activism, I can live with that. The public speaking part is dead easy. I don't look at it like public speaking. Every time I engage with somebody, I'm not looking at a screen, I'm looking at you. I am imagining an audience who watches this, and I am making sure that each person who potentially watches this, as much as they're anonymous and I don't know them, understands that I'm talking to them. Because to me, public speaking is therapy. It's just very, very big group therapy. And that's it. So the reason I'm decent at it is because I'm a half decent therapist, and I don't try and do what I'm not. If I tried to structure this, I'd be terrible. But if I tell a few stories and think of the human beings that are behind the screen, it becomes easy.
See, we need that training, Wali. That would make us feel a lot more comfortable with this conversation. I won't tell you that we weren't a bag of nerves before this, obviously. We were really...
You're doing wonderfully, all of you.
So last kind of sport-related question, I promise. So recently, most recently, we've seen a lot of athletes and sports personalities speaking out about injustices and oppression. So, your opinion, what do you think about sports professionals? Do you think that they have a role to play in social injustice and politics, or do you think they should just stick to what they're good at, which is the sports?
Everybody has a role to play in social justice and human dignity. Every single person. It's one of those areas of thinking where there are bystanders are part of the problem. People who look and do nothing, you are part of the problem. You don't feel like part of the problem because you'd never join in, you'd never become an active antagonist, but you think that you can help by staying silent. But millions of people have been wounded by the silence of potential allies. And sports people have these big platforms. Let's look at what sports people can do. There are young people who, through this entire summer, they ate because of the actions of a sports person. They did not go hungry because of the actions of a sports person, not a politician, not an academic, not a psychologist, but a plain old sports person. There is no choice. When it comes to being a role model, there is only one choice. People love to believe there's a choice of whether you are a role model or not. People love to think that there's a choice of whether you should be a role model or not. There are no choices. The only choice that you have is whether to be a good role model or a bad one. When you said your title, that alone makes you a role model. Mm-hmm. The fact of who you are, your racial and ethnic background, plus that title, means there are people who look to you. Mm-hmm. And even if there was only one, ta-da, you're a role model. And we know there's not only one. So that's the choice we have. I'm not imagining that I'm the kind of person that the entire world follows and cares what I do, but I know there's a handful. I know that there's a kid that I met when he was 7, and I signed an autograph for him. And he followed my career. He followed me as I got my master's and my doctorate. And now that 7, 8-year-old is a grown-up and a psychologist in America. Even if that's the only person I ever will influence, yeah, there's my choice, to be a good or a bad role model.
Thank you. And final question from me. So you spoke about sports people being role models and speaking up for social justice. So what can organizations learn from that? And why should inclusion matter to organizations? Mm-hmm. And also, why should people in those organizations care about it so much?
Yep. So I'm not a warm and fuzzy psychologist. I'm not here for inclusion because we sit around in a circle and hold hands and sing Kumbaya, and that's not what I'm here for. Inclusion is a 21st century performance prerogative. Here we are in a world turned upside down, where stuff that we never thought would happen is happening, where the predictable has become the unpredictable, where people are more anxious and frightened than ever before, where there are divisions and nationalism and all kinds of ugliness growing around us. If ever there has been a time when understanding different people and people being able to bring their experiences and insights to solve the problems we have at the table, it is now. This is a performance prerogative. That's why it's important. The side effect is it also feels awesome. To be in an environment where you're not judged for your accent, where you're not judged for the fact that you went to the wrong school, or you didn't go to school at all, or you were in care, or you have a disability, or you're LGBTQ, or whatever else. That's what we want. The most important part of any human being is in the top 8 inches of their head. Everything you are looking at right now is simply a case for my brain. This is my brain case, and it's different than yours. but there is such richness when you get to know what's inside people's minds. And I don't understand why people wouldn't want to have their life enhanced. It's like we understand it in some really ridiculous ways, like the fact that Indian food, and I know that that's a weird generic thing, but Indian food is the national dish. And even as I say that, I know how ridiculous that is. But people think like that's a benefit, but then they can also say terribly anti-Asian and anti-Islamophobic and Islamophobic stuff is such a weird contrast. That richness that comes in food also comes in those interactions with us, with creativity, with ideas. I don't know why people would want to miss out on that. My life is enhanced by all the weird and wonderful people I know. I'm weird, I know that. And I'm hoping it enhances the lives of the other people around me, even if they're not quite so weird. I don't know why they wouldn't want that. There's a little bit of fear. Anytime you meet somebody who's different, you have those early moments of what do they have to offer? What, how do I have to tread lightly, and what do I need to understand and learn? But it's so worth it. It's so worth it.
Thank you.
Honestly, thank you, John. That is massive. I mean, myself working for the police, that's part of my role, so I completely agree. The same with Wali. We both do that kind of role within our organisations. So it's listening to you. I just want to impart that on everybody else within my organisation, definitely. So that's why I'm hoping a lot of people are going to log on at the event. But no, from my point of view, thank you so much. It was an absolute pleasure to speak to you and just to have that, that small part of your time today. So really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
And also from me, John, yeah, thank you so much. It's been a long time ambition of mine as an NBA fan to meet you, but
it's a pleasure, it really is.
Done it virtually, so that's
this is the most I've talked about basketball in such a long time. It's really, I almost never do.
Yeah. So and yeah, we look forward to continuing our discussions at the event on the 20th of October. And just for anyone watching, so this is our Wiltshire Police and Wiltshire Council's joint Black History Month event on the 20th of October, and it's free and open to everyone. So in order to register, please head over to wiltshirebme.eventbrite.co.uk, where you'll hear from John and other speakers. So from me and from Megan, that's all we have time for. So thank you very much for joining us, John, and thank you for everyone watching.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.